Who started for both Lee Gross Cup, if you're old enough to remember the name, and people who know football going back know the name, actually started for the Giants and the Titans, which they were before they were the Jets. They were the Titans. So there is a guy who started for both teams, technically, because it's still the Titans were the original Jets, so that is true. Brandon in Marlboro, what's up, Brandon? I knew I'd get a call on this today. Go ahead, what's up? This is obviously, I knew it would be a topic. Go ahead, Brandon.
Hey, Mike, how you doing? Thanks
Good.
for the call. There's a lot of merging, obviously, on Stanton waiving his no-trade clause to the Yankees. Just wanted to hear.
Well, he gave them 4 teams, and he gave them the Yankees. I don't see this as a fit. I don't see the Yankees. I think it'd be the worst thing the Yankees could do. Jeter is going to – you got guys who just left the Yankee organization working for Jeter. They know the organization intimately. You don't want them rummaging through the organization to fill their pockets on a guy who's also – you got to pay a fortune. You got young, burgeoning right-handed hitters who are already, immense home run hitters that you don't need – a right-handed guy who's going to break the bank. I understand what he is, but there are teams that need him. The Yankees really don't, let's be honest.
I agree, Mike. I think it could go either way. Well,
let me ask something. What would you get? What are you willing to give up for him?
This might sound crazy, but I would say Torres, because we don't know how he's going to come back in. Tommy
that's
John.
Fine.
I know that it wasn't his throwing arm, but we don't know.
Right.
I would say Justice Sheffield,
right.
And then I would say Clint Frazier.
I think you're fair. I think you actually were fair. I think you're right, but that's a lot of talent. Plus, remember this: you now have to put him in. You got to move Judge, okay, which he's not going to love, or move Stanton, whichever one's going to agree to go to left field. I don't see either Judge or Giancarlo wanting to be a full-time DH. And the money is going to make the money you're going to have to pay these guys in a couple of years outrageous. So it doesn't really work for them because they don't need – the one thing they don't need is right-handed power. It's the one thing they have a surplus of.
I mean, having Stanton and Judge in the middle of the lineup.
Are you telling me the Yankees need more homers?
No, definitely not.
So that's why that's why, although I understand you want to talk about it, it doesn't make a lot of sense. They don't need power. Why would they want to pay him? They don't need power, specifically don't need right-handed power. They have a ton of right-handed power. They have their own 50 home run guy. They don't need another guy who they control economically for years to come. So, I mean, come on now. Listen, I understand why it's attractive. He's a great player, but it doesn't fit. He fits the other teams more. That's all. He just fits the other teams more. Sometimes the guy doesn't fit your team. Ken in Babylon, what's up, Ken?
Hey, Mike. Happy holidays.
You too. What's happening?
Just had a question on the Heisman, finalists for this weekend.
Right.
I know you touched on it a little bit at the beginning of the show, but have you ever remembered there being less of an impressive group of guys and a more obvious choice than Baker Mayfield?
Listen, there are years. There are many years where it's quiet and boring, and it's one guy, and that's the case this year. It is. It's just one guy.
And my other question was, if you think that J.T. Barrett doesn't have that game in Iowa, do you think he's at the ceremony this Saturday?
No, I don't. I don't.
I mean, if you look at his numbers compared to like Lamar Jackson.
First of all, I think Love. I think Love would have been. I voted for Love second. All right. I didn't vote for Jackson or Barrett. I didn't vote for either one.
Who did you vote for last year?
I voted for Deshaun Watson the last 2 years. I trumpeted him and voted him to win the award twice in a row and begged everybody to vote for him because I thought he was the best player the last 2 years in college. I thought he deserved it. He didn't win it either year. I thought he deserved it both years. I voted for him. I begged people to vote for him. They wouldn't vote. I couldn't get him to do it, and I thought he deserved the award the last 2 years. Frank in Yonkers, what's up, Frank?
Hey, good afternoon, Mike. Happy holidays.
Yeah, Frank, what's up?
I missed you. If the Giants and Niners have the identical record at the end of the season, who holds the second pick?
The second pick is based on the strength of schedule. Whoever played the softer schedule is second because it's the weaker performance. So if you have 2 wins and the Giants have 2 wins, whoever played the weaker schedule actually is 2. Because of the fact that means you were the worst team. So that's how it works. John in Danbury, what's up, John?
Hey, Mike. One thing I wanted to call you. You had made comment about your interview with Bill Polian.
Yeah, when he hung up on us. Yeah.
The only thing about that, you've always referenced it. That year that the Colts laid down for the Jets, they made it to the Super Bowl, and they lost in the Super Bowl to a team who had started 13-0 and lost the last 3 games. So both teams laid down. So your argument that you have always made about them laying down.
Well, listen,
it really didn't affect them.
I didn't make it. It was Peyton Manning who made it. You know,
no, I
mean,
agree,
at that game, they had a mutiny at halftime of the game, okay? And there was another year. Then I'm referencing 2 years because there was 2 years. There was the other year they lost in the first round. And I think that's the year the fight was about then. I mean, the fight was about the year they lost in the first round. There were twice the Colts were undefeated. And,
the year I could think of
it was the other year.
They lost to the Steelers.
That was the year. And that's the year the argument was about. The argument was not about the Jet year then. The argument was the year they lost in the first round. There were twice they were undefeated. And the argument was about the year they lost in the first round, not the year they lost in the Super Bowl. That's the year that he started the argument with us. That was the year that they lost in the first round. So not the year they lost in the Super Bowl. So there was the other year. They twice were undefeated.
And then the Falcons.
Yes.
Yeah, the Falcons are really. They beat you see the 3 teams behind them at 6-6. Detroit, the Cowboys, and the Packers. They beat. So
they own it on everybody. Well, they're not automatically in.
Well, they're 2 up with 3 to play.
Well, how can they be in, though, when they could lose to Seattle and Carolina, though?
Yeah, but...
So those, you're right. They can beat all the 6-6s, but they got to knock out either Carolina or Seattle.
Yeah, that's my mistake.
Yeah, well, they're going to have to play hard the rest of the way. Now, I felt that they had as good a chance to win the division as they did make the playoffs because now the one thing is they have the break over. They lost to Carolina. They have the break over. So Carolina would come down the division record because they would split if they beat them the last week. They beat Seattle. So they have the edge over Seattle. So you're right about that. But I think the problem is Seattle's going to have the better record, but they're probably going to have to beat Carolina anyway to get in.
Yeah, well, honestly, with a healthy Kamara, just watching all year, I think the Saints have been the better team than Atlanta has.
Oh, listen, I think Atlanta's
even last night.
I think Atlanta's been very disappointing. But I'll tell you this: last night, Atlanta handed the ball to the Saints plenty of times where the Saints could have broken the game open. The Atlanta defense did a pretty good job last night. I thought the Atlanta defense played well.
I think Kamara going out early
killed him. Absolutely killed him. I totally agree that Kamara getting hurt absolutely killed him. And if you saw what Drew Brees said after the game, it's a point that I've brought up a lot this year. And this is the thing that even though there's been teams that have won on the road in this game, you saw again from Drew Brees how much the players hate this game last night, the Thursday night game. He blamed all the same injuries on the fact they had to play 2 days later. I mean, he was like, this is ridiculous. That's why these guys got hurt. We just played a game the other day. I mean, blah, 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 blah. Well, the only problem is Drew. The only problem, if you want to argue it, is there's 2 teams playing. I mean, so there's nothing you can do about it. They're both in the same boat. They both played, 3 days, both played 3 days ago. There's not much you can do about it. But he was complaining last night about the Thursday schedule is awful and this and that. That was a frustrating loss for them last night. But right now, that's my point about, John, about the 6-6s, is that the 6-6s are in big trouble because Atlanta holds tiebreakers over those teams. That's the big problem. So that kills them. They beat Detroit. They beat Dallas. They beat Green Bay. They also beat Seattle. So they have tiebreakers over all those teams, but they're probably going to have to beat Carolina anyway. Otherwise, they might not have as good a record as Seattle. So with that the case, they might wind up winning the division. If they can beat New Orleans the second time. Now, they can lose in New Orleans, beat Carolina, and wind up getting a wild card. They could do that. That was a big win for Atlanta last night. A very big win. They had to have that game, and they got it. Just like this week, Carolina needs this game at home against Minnesota. If they lose it with their schedule, they could have a hard time because they got to go to Atlanta the last game of the season. And if that's a playoff game, I like Atlanta over Carolina in that game. But Atlanta has got to stop making the dumb mistake. My God, how many bad interceptions have they had this year? And they're not all the quarterback's fault. How many times does he hit the guy in the hands with the ball, and the ball's wound up in the defender's hands? You saw it again last night with Hooper. 2:00, here's Mr. Met.